Nobody talks about how easy it is for smart people to lose money, not because they're careless, but because they're confident. There was a moment I still replay in my head. Quiet, ordinary, almost invisible. A single decision that felt logical at the time, even intelligent. $50,000. Not lost in one dramatic crash, but slowly, calmly, almost respectfully. And the strange part is, I didn't even feel stupid while doing it. That feeling came later, and by then it was already too late. Because at the time, everything made sense. Everyone around me was talking about it. The conversations felt informed, the numbers looked convincing. The confidence in other people's voices made uncertainty seem irrational. It looked structured, clean, intelligent. And I remember thinking, this is what people who understand money do. Looking back now, I realized I wasn't chasing wealth as much as I was chasing certainty. I wanted to believe that one good decision could erase years of doubt and finally prove that I was moving in the right direction. But I didn't realize something important yet. I wasn't making a financial decision. I was making an emotional one. The investment looked like an opportunity on the surface, but underneath it was carrying something much heavier. My desire to catch up, my fear of being left behind, and the quiet hope that success could arrive all at once. That's how these stories usually begin, not with greed, not with stupidity, but with a perfectly reasonable decision made at the wrong emotional moment. And sometimes the choices that change your life forever don't announce themselves with alarms or warning signs. Sometimes they arrive quietly, disguised as logic, waiting for you to mistake confidence for clarity.
If you've ever checked your bank account twice in one day, not because something changed, but because you were hoping something did, you already understand this feeling. Most people aren't struggling because they earn enough. They're struggling because life has quietly become a performance. Every morning begins the same way. You pick up your phone, scroll for a few minutes, and suddenly it feels like everyone else is moving faster than you. Someone your age just bought a new car. Someone else just moved into a beautiful apartment. Another person announces a promotion, a business milestone, or an investment that supposedly doubled overnight. You tell yourself you're happy for them. You tell yourself you're not comparing. But somewhere inside, your chest tightens anyway. Then comes the pressure no one can see. Bills that arrive whether you're ready or not. Dreams that seem to get more expensive every year. Family members who believe you're doing better than you actually are. Friends who think success is just around the corner for you. So you smile. You say you're fine. You keep posting. You keep showing up. But underneath that version of yourself is someone quietly wondering if they're already falling behind. And that's where dangerous decisions are born. Not from greed, not from ignorance, but from emotional exhaustion. Because exhaustion has a way of changing your judgment. It convinces you that shortcuts are strategies, that urgency is ambition, that one perfect opportunity can erase years of frustration. Without even realizing it, you stop making decisions from a place of peace. You start making them from a place of pressure. And pressure has a way of making almost anything sound reasonable. Looking back, I can see that I wasn't chasing money as much as I was chasing relief. Relief from comparison, relief from uncertainty, relief from the invisible race I believed everyone else was winning. By the time the investment appeared in front of me, the decision had already started forming long before I ever saw the opportunity. Because the world had been preparing my emotions long before it ever tested my judgment.
The truth is, smart people don't usually fall for obvious scams. They fall for reasonable illusions. That was exactly what happened to me. It didn't begin with a stranger promising impossible riches. It began with a conversation, a recommendation from someone who sounded informed, a simple sentence that seemed harmless. You should really look into this. That night, I found myself scrolling through articles, videos, charts, and opinions that all seemed to point in the same direction. Everything looked professional. Everything sounded intelligent. The graphs were clean. The explanations were logical. Even the risks were presented in a way that made them feel manageable. Nothing about it felt dangerous. And that's exactly what made it dangerous. Because real danger rarely introduces itself as danger. It arrives dressed as opportunity. It whispers instead of shouting. It convinces instead of forcing. So I invested. A small amount at first, an amount I told myself I could afford to lose. Then I invested again, and then again. Each decision felt calculated. Each step felt responsible. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Without realizing it, I stopped investing for returns. I started investing for validation. If this worked, it would prove I was smart. It would prove I understood money. It would prove I wasn't falling behind anymore. And once your identity becomes attached to an investment, objectivity quietly leaves the room. You stop asking whether the decision still makes sense. You start defending it, because walking away would feel like admitting you were wrong. That's one of the strangest tricks the human mind plays. The longer we commit to something, the harder it becomes to question it. Not because the facts have changed, but because our pride has. Looking back now, I can see that the investment itself wasn't the trap. The trap was believing that intelligence alone could protect me from emotion. Because no amount of knowledge can make you completely rational when your fears, your hopes, and your identity are sitting at the same table. And by then, I wasn't protecting my money anymore. I was protecting the version of myself that desperately wanted to believe I had made the right choice. But the strange part is, nothing collapsed overnight. There was no dramatic headline, no sudden crash that forced me to confront reality. Instead, there were small gains, small losses, just enough movement to keep hope alive. And hope becomes incredibly expensive when it's mixed with ego. Over time, I found myself checking the investment more often. At first, it was once a day, then every few hours, then whenever I picked up my phone. I told myself I was simply staying informed, but deep down, I wasn't looking for information. I was looking for reassurance. Then came the first real dip. Not catastrophic, just uncomfortable enough to make me pause. I stared at the numbers and immediately began creating explanations. It'll recover. Markets move in cycles. This is temporary. I'm early, not wrong. Looking back, I realized those weren't facts. They were emotional defenses disguised as logic. And that's how denial often sounds when intelligent people speak to themselves. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The numbers kept changing, but so did I. I became quieter, more anxious, more emotionally attached to something that was supposed to be just an investment. Friends would casually ask if I was still holding it. I'd smile and say, "Yeah, I'm still in." But behind that smile was a growing fear I couldn't admit even to myself. Because by then, the investment wasn't just about money anymore. It had become part of my identity. Every loss felt personal. Every small recovery gave me just enough hope to stay longer. And slowly, I stopped thinking about profit. I started thinking about regret. What if I sold too early? What if tomorrow was the rebound? What if leaving now meant losing the opportunity I'd waited for? Those questions kept me frozen. That's when I learned that the real cost of a bad investment isn't always the money you lose. Sometimes it's the clarity you lose, the peace you lose, the confidence you lose. And one ordinary day, after adding everything together, I finally accepted the truth. I hadn't lost $50,000 in a single moment. I had lost it through dozens of emotional decisions that I kept convincing myself were logical, one justification at a time. I remember the day I finally added everything up. There was no dramatic crash, no breaking news, no moment where the world suddenly stopped. Just a quiet afternoon, a calculator, and a number I could no longer ignore. $50,000. Gone. Not in one reckless decision, but in dozens of small ones that I never questioned enough. I sat there longer than I expected, not because I was shocked, but because a part of me had already known the truth long before I was willing to accept it. And in that silence, I realized something that changed the way I think about money forever. This was never just about investing. It was about psychology. Smart people don't lose money because they lack information. They lose money because they believe they can stay objective while their emotions quietly take control. Comparison, urgency, fear of falling behind, the need to prove something. Those emotions don't arrive looking dangerous. They arrive sounding perfectly reasonable. They convince you that now is the moment, that waiting means losing, that everyone else has figured life out except you. And without realizing it, you stop making decisions based on reality. You start making them based on identity. Looking back, I wasn't chasing wealth, I was chasing relief. Relief from uncertainty, relief from self-doubt, relief from the feeling that I was running out of time. But money has a way of exposing the conversations you're having with yourself. It reflects your patience, your discipline, your insecurities, and your ability to stay calm when life makes you feel left behind. Maybe that's the quiet truth behind most financial mistakes. They were never really about money. They were about trying to become someone before we believed we were enough. And the strange part is, life will probably ask you the same question again. A different investment, a different opportunity, a different promise. The real lesson isn't learning how to avoid every mistake. It's learning to recognize when fear is disguising itself as logic and having the patience to walk away. Because sometimes the greatest return on investment isn't the money you make, it's the wisdom you gain before the next decision arrives.